There's something fascinating about people who don't say much. After years of simply watching and listening, I've learned that the quiet ones often hold the deepest understanding. While the world fills itself with endless chatter, they sit in calm silence, absorbing everything. They're not absent. They're observing. They're not timid. They're thoughtful. And their silence isn't coldness, it's protection. They guard something sacred, their peace, their clarity, and their grasp of life. Silence isn't emptiness. It's a space filled with the things most people overlook. The slight tremor in someone's voice, a fleeting glance, or the tone behind the words. To those who live quietly, every word has weight. They spend language like currency, carefully, deliberately, and only when it truly matters. If you've ever been told you're too quiet, remember this. Your silence isn't a weakness. It's wisdom that noise cannot understand. The psychology of quiet people is layered and complex. Silence for them isn't the absence of thought. It's the presence of many thoughts colliding at once. They speak only when meaning outweighs noise. Their minds are constantly analyzing who's listening, what emotions are in the room, and what consequences words might carry. This isn't hesitation. It's emotional intelligence at work. Studies show that people who talk less often possess greater self-awareness. They process emotions deeply and take time before reacting. They don't lack words. They simply wait until words align with truth. In today's world, where loudness is mistaken for confidence, quiet people are often misunderstood. Society celebrates volume, but the quiet ones know that more sound doesn't mean more sense. They understand that wisdom doesn't need to shout. Every group has that one person who rarely speaks, but when they do, everyone listens. That's not chance, that's earned gravity. Silence builds respect, because presence speaks louder than noise ever could. Quiet individuals notice what others miss. The nervous hand, the small sigh, the subtle shift in energy when someone enters the room. Their ability to read between the lines isn't mystical. It's awareness. When you speak less, your mind learns to listen to what's unsaid. That insight gives them quiet power, the power to understand without judgment, to feel without control, and to see through the masks others wear. Yet silence doesn't always mean serenity. Inside many quiet people lives a storm of thoughts, memories, emotions, and possibilities swirling at once. They pause before speaking because they're sorting through the noise within, searching for harmony before releasing sound. Psychologists suggest that most quiet people lean toward introversion, not because they dislike others, but because they manage energy carefully. Solitude recharges them, chaos drains them. That's why their words are chosen with precision. They don't talk to fill space, they talk to bring clarity. But sometimes silence grows from pain. Many quiet people learned stillness as protection. Maybe they grew up in environments where speaking up invited judgment or conflict, so they learned the safety of listening instead of reacting. Over time, that survival skill became part of their identity. They discovered that silence offers control in a world that often misunderstands. And while that silence may seem like distance, it's actually self-preservation. This kind of restraint is not weakness, it's mastery. Studies in psychology reveal that people who speak less often display higher self-regulation. They can experience strong emotions without letting those emotions command their words. They pause, process, and then respond with care. That's not passivity, it's power. Many of the world's greatest thinkers were observers first, speakers second. They found truth in stillness, because silence breeds insight, and insight blooms into creativity. But let's be honest, it's not easy being quiet in a world that fears silence. People rush to fill every pause with noise, mistaking stillness for discomfort. When you don't play along, you're labeled distant or cold. Yet, the quiet person operates on a higher rhythm, one that listens more than it speaks and understands more than it reacts. Silence isn't the absence of life. It's where life slows down enough to be understood. When quiet people finally speak, their words carry depth. Each sentence is filtered through empathy and truth. They're not talking to impress, they're expressing sincerely. Research even shows that quiet, introspective people have more activity in brain regions linked to empathy and reflection. Their silence is never empty, it's processing. They're listening to others and to themselves. But this kind of sensitivity has a cost, because when you notice everything, you also feel everything. Quiet people often absorb the emotions around them, the tension in the air, the sadness behind smiles, the exhaustion in someone's eyes. That's why solitude feels like medicine. It's not loneliness, it's recovery. They need moments of stillness to release what the world unknowingly gives them. And when they love deeply. Their care isn't casual, it's wholehearted. They don't speak to perform. They act with sincerity. You won't find them interested in shallow talk or temporary bonds. They seek meaning. They want conversations that breathe honesty. And when you meet one of them, you'll feel it. Their presence feels calm. Their words stay with you long after. They listen not to reply but to understand. Still, quiet people carry a paradox. They crave connection but fear being misunderstood. They want to be seen but not spotlighted. They long to be heard but not shouted over. So they retreat, not from indifference but from exhaustion. It's not that they lack feelings. They simply protect them. When they finally open up, what they share is something sacred. Truth carried quietly for too long. If you are one of them, remember, you don't owe anyone noise to prove your worth. You don't have to speak louder to be powerful. Your silence already speaks volumes. It reveals thoughtfulness, depth, and emotional intelligence. Silence is a language, a quiet way of saying, I understand. Sometimes it communicates more than words ever could. Many quiet souls weren't born that way. They became that way. Often, they grew up surrounded by chaos, places where everyone talked but few listened, where emotions were loud but understanding was rare. So they built silence as shelter. Psychology calls this adaptive silence, a defense mechanism that later transforms into identity. Over years, it becomes who they are, not just how they survive. That's why quiet people can seem unreadable. Their inner worlds are so rich and carefully guarded that few ever see the full depth. But that's not secrecy, it's boundaries. They allow in only those who listen with genuine intent. For them, silence filters truth. Quiet individuals often belong to a group psychologists call highly sensitive people, HSP. Roughly 20% of the population has this trait. People who notice everything, tone shifts, small gestures, emotional energy. Their nervous systems absorb more detail than most minds can process. Every conversation feels like 1,000 layers of information. What's said, what's unsaid, and what's meant. It's draining. So silence becomes their reset. But quiet doesn't mean passive. Many of the greatest innovators, writers, and leaders were quiet observers. Einstein once said, "Solitude and monotony stimulate the creative mind." He was right. Quiet isn't emptiness, it's incubation. Silence allows thoughts to ripen before they're spoken. When quiet people finally share their ideas, they come polished, profound, and precise. Yet, that depth often brings loneliness. In a fast, noisy world, stillness is mistaken for indifference. People confuse silence with distance, unaware that quiet individuals are often the most present ones in the room. They're not detached, they're deeply tuned in. They study tone, timing, sincerity. They understand that communication isn't just words, it's emotion, rhythm, and authenticity. Quiet people often excel in nonverbal expression. Their eyes speak. Their energy comforts. They make others feel seen without a single word. True empathy doesn't need sound. It needs attention, and they give it completely. You can feel when a quiet person cares. They remember your smallest details. They listen without interrupting. They make silence feel safe. Still, there's a shadow to quietness. For some, silence becomes a wall, a way to avoid vulnerability. They hold everything in until it weighs heavier than speech. That's the quiet soul's struggle. The desire to be known, but the fear of being misunderstood. This inner tension can lead to overthinking or anxiety, not because they're fragile, but because they feel everything too deeply. Yet silence remains their greatest teacher. It shows them that not all truths require sound. That patience reveals more than reaction ever could. Through quietness, they learn to see life's smallest details. The sigh before someone gives up, the sparkle when they talk about what they love, the tremor when they hide their pain. They experience life not as noise, but as a delicate composition of feelings. Maybe that's the trade-off. Wisdom in exchange for simplicity. When you see too much, you can't unsee it. When you feel too deeply, you can't turn it off. But that's also what makes quiet people so grounding. They bring peace where others bring pressure, understanding where others bring judgment. In a loud world obsessed with being heard, they remind us that true power doesn't shout. It listens. You don't need to fill every silence. Sometimes silence fills you. It's a space where life breathes, where truth whispers, where real connection begins. So, the next time you meet someone who doesn't talk much, don't mistake their quiet for emptiness. They're measuring moments, observing meaning, and listening to what most overlook. And if you're one of them, cherish that. Your silence is not absence, it's depth. It balances the world's chaos with calm. It reminds people that presence doesn't always need sound, because in the end, it's not how much you say that matters. It's how deeply you make others feel. Quiet souls do that effortlessly. They heal with presence, connect through understanding, and speak through silence. Words may explain thoughts, but silence reveals truth. And sometimes, that's the most powerful language of all. If this spoke to your heart, remember, silence has its own voice. Subscribe for more stories that understand what words often can't.